Good afternoon to the Cary Rotary Club.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to the friendliest and most extemporaneously greeted club in District 7710. Thank you, Scott. It's great to see everybody this Thursday afternoon in late January.
Thursday.
-2.
Nice change.
Thursday -2.
-2. I knew I was ahead of my time.
You're just checking on.
So as I get my mind right, perhaps I can call on Darren Gay to start our meeting with a prayer and pledge. Darren.
Thank you, President. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for giving us this wonderful opportunity to come together today as a Rotary family, Lord. We just thank you for the blessings you bestow upon us each and every day, Lord. Thank you for the guidance that we're going to need moving forward, and just ask that you continue to guide us and direct us as you would have us do, Lord. Bless us food and nourishment of our bodies, in your precious and holy name we say. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everybody. Welcome. Eric Schmidt, could you introduce us to some guests and visiting Rotarians today?
I would be glad to do that, President. Thank you very much. Today's guests, Dorothy has a guest. Dorothy, would you introduce us to your guest, please?
Okay. She's also the guest of Mr. Coulter. That's in here. This is Kim Riley, and she's a neighbor, and she's interested in joining, and she used to work with me at Function Arts. So I'm happy to have her here today.
All right, welcome, Kim.
Do we have any other visitors today?
Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you very much, all. And Kim, welcome. And to our club, we're happy to have you here.
Thank you, Eric, and welcome back in second visit. So thanks for coming back. I did want to pass along, I'd like to ask each of our members to sort of keep in our thoughts Howard Johnson. I received word from Mark Lawson this week that Howard underwent a heart bypass procedure in the last week or so. He's recovering well and is expected to be home from the hospital this week, but let us all keep him in our thoughts and in our prayers. Rod Brooks, have you got some information on an upcoming event?
I do indeed. I do indeed. Thank you, President Bob. Well, you know what? We are 1 week away from our chili dinner fundraising event, our 19th annual. So for our guests, please know that our club, the Rotary Club of Cary here, we have a commitment to ending hunger around the world that goes back more than 2 decades. And so over the last 18 years through our chili dinner fundraising event, we've raised more than $500,000, over $508,000. And this year's event promises to be as successful. We have 83 sponsors who have already committed to next Tuesday's event. We also have 29 club members who are in the process of selling raffle tickets. Overall, we have $35,000 committed and another $5,000 in outstanding requests for additional sponsorship. So the Chili Dinner Committee, who I'm tremendously grateful to, is working hard to secure those final sponsorships and get everybody signed up by next Tuesday. Thanks everybody for your support. We've had a tremendous, as we have every year, we've had a tremendous amount of support from club members, businesses and organizations throughout the community, and we're so grateful for that. Just a couple of notes about next week. Please arrive early. We have a very full program planned that will start at 12:30 sharp. So we want to make sure everybody gets here and gets seated and, you know, gets a meal served and that sort of thing so that we can start our program right at 12:30. We have a great program planned. You know, doing this event the way we're doing it sort of virtually here without serving chili means that we'll get to hear from our sponsors, means that we'll get to hear from beneficiary organizations who are benefiting from the funds that we're raising. Howard will be speaking. And we have a new feature this year, which is our raffle. So we're going to have a series of raffle drawings throughout the event. So all that means that we need to start promptly at 12:30 and just ask that everybody gets here. In the meantime, again, if you have raffle tickets and you're selling those, thanks for doing that. And again, I just want to thank everybody for your support. Turn it back to you, President Bob. Thank you.
Thanks, President. Really looking forward to that event. And so I have had a couple of questions yet this afternoon. We will meet here and there will be a program presented from here, but we'll also be Zooming. So it'll be kind of just business as usual. Just we'll go back to starting on time. Somebody can't get the meetings kicked off on time. I don't know what it is. Also upcoming, we've got our district training conference scheduled for February 19th. If you have an intent to go to that meeting in person, it's important that you register by February 8th. Because if there are not 80 people registered to attend in person, it'll be held online. So it's going to be an all or none. So if you intend it and would prefer it to be in person, now's the time to register. If it doesn't matter, register later and you can attend online. But that would be from about 9:30 to noon on February 19th with a mid-year assembly. If you're thinking of going to the district conference in Winston-Salem in May, one reason you might want to attend the district conference here in February is that there will be a one-day sale for registration for first-time attendees, $99, which is a savings of at least $60 off the cover price. So if you're planning to go, that's a good reason to attend the conference. We had intended to go to a hockey game on February 27th, but the Hurricanes are doing so darn well that our tickets get sold out, kind of sold out from under us. We weren't moving that fast. But we'd still like to go to a game. So it's come down to a choice. So I'd like to conduct a brief straw poll here. If you were going to go to a hockey game and you were choosing between going Thursday, the 24th to see the Dallas Stars or Thursday, the 31st of March to see the Montreal Canadiens, which would you choose? So a show of hands, who would have a preference for the Dallas Stars on the 24th? Who would have a preference for the Montreal Canadiens on the 31st? Don, you voted twice. I like that. All right, looks like the ayes have it. We'll aim for the 31st and the Canadiens. Darren guarantees a victory. Okay. I beg your pardon? Thursday, the 31st of March. Okay, good. All right. Any miracle moments to share? Jim Lovejoy.
It's not a miracle, it's actually kind of sad. The houses in the Dominican Republic are being built. They're running a little short of cash because the building materials and everything has seemed to have gone up in price. And also the Omicron virus has surged down there, so we will not be going down. So that's the bad news. Good news is I'll be here for the meeting.
All right, well. Thanks for that update, Jim. And David, looks like Jim's available to run a program sometime in March, so if I want to reach out to him. All right, we'll keep all of that in our thoughts. Let's move to our program, the reason why we're here. Bruce Howell, can I ask you to introduce our speaker?
Glad to. Before I introduce our speaker, I need to introduce the young man that was accommodative and helped me secure our speaker today. He's from Washington, North Carolina. For those of you who don't know, it's down east. It's not Little Washington. But David McCleary, right. So David, we're glad to have you with us today. Some 30-some years ago, I am sure that many of you that go back that fall will remember, but our mayor at the time, Coca Booth, was very excited. We had just opened up McGregor West. Well, not McGregor West, but McGregor Business Park. And we were trying to get anybody to come. And we were able to get any number of businesses to come. But I think in that group, the one that Coca Booth was proudest to secure was Trans World Radio. And I was at several functions when our mayor at that time would talk about how proud he was to get Trans World Radio to locate in Cary, North Carolina. Our speaker today is Lauren Libby, and he's president, CEO of Trans World Radio. Lauren is a Kansas native, graduate of Kansas State University with a bachelor's degree and an MBA from Regis University in Denver, Colorado. And he was telling me it does snow in Denver. I think he was kind of referring to what we call the snow just the other day. Lauren has spent more than 33 years with the Navigators. I don't know if you guys are on the mailing list for the Navigators, but I am. But I promise you, they send out great literature, beautiful calendars, and I've got some extra ones in case you need a calendar. But he spent 33 years with the Christian ministry based in Colorado Springs. His last 13, 14 years, because I've heard 2 different dates, have been located right here in Cary with us. It is with a great deal of pleasure. Let's wish Lauren a great Rotary Club welcome. Lauren.
Thanks, Bruce. I have a clock here because, I'm a broadcaster and I understand I need to be done at 25 after. So, we've got to time that and make sure that we make it. It's great to be with you. Let me give you a little background. I grew up on a farm in northern Kansas. We grew cattle, wheat, soybeans, all kinds of things. And I got into broadcasting when I was 10 years old. I put a bootleg radio station on the air, and it was on a frequency of 570 kilohertz, which the local farmers would listen to for their markets every day. And so here I am with 30 watts with a 1,000-foot wire between the house and the barn, doing my thing. And one day the phone rang and my father, who was a staunch German rancher, said, "Kid, I think this is for you." And so I picked up the phone, and I'll never forget, on the other end, the gentleman said, "Hello, my name is," he gave his name. He said, "I'm the chief engineer of the Federal Communications Commission in Kansas City, Kansas. And I hear you're running an illegal radio station." We put people in jail for doing that.
So here I am, 10 years old. I said, well, Harold W. Burrell was his name. I said, Mr. Burrell, I have no idea, but I don't want to go to jail. He said, well, you know what? You got to get yourself a ham radio license. You'd have a whole lot more fun. And you know what? You wouldn't hear from me. So I did. And about 10 years later, I was working at a radio station. Harold Burrell showed up to do an inspection on that radio station. So we went out. He wanted to go to the towers. We went out to the towers and we were on the air. And he said, I just want to get a little closer. And he reached over and touched the tower and it burned a hole right through his finger. And he looked at me, he said, you know, that's pretty stupid. And I said, yeah, kind of like a kid, 10-year-old kid putting a pirate radio station. But you know, that was really what got started. And I got into broadcasting and I've been messing around with it ever since. And so now doing it for a very interesting cause. TWRs were known these days. We're not just radio anymore. We talk to 190 countries each and every day in over 300 languages. To my reckoning, I think we are the largest broadcaster in the world, with the exception probably of China. And it fluctuates between China and probably us in terms of impact and coverage. The Chinese are very, very big on media. And so our goal is to give a big voice to Jesus Christ around the globe. And we do that every day. It's pretty incredible when you think about it. And in these days of conflict around the world, I tell you, there needs to be some hope in the world. I turned on the television this morning and I got a video from our leader in Ukraine. And you know, the situation between Russia and Ukraine, it's not a good situation at all. In fact, nobody really knows what's going to happen. You got 150,000 Russian troops on the border. You have the United States saying we're going to pony up, what, 8,500 troops possibly. And you know, you look at that and you say, that is a dangerous situation. Well, there's a dangerous situation today in Taiwan with China. There's a dangerous situation in North Korea. There's a dangerous situation in India. There's a dangerous situation, in Russia. There's a dangerous situation in Iran. It is a dangerous world we live in. And it is a world that desperately needs help and hope. And so what our express purpose is doing is speaking hope to the world. And it's interesting, we get responses back from people who are online. We say we're on the air, we're online, and we're on the ground in all of these countries. If I were to take you to India, there would be 11,000 what are called radio home groups. They're little groups that meet in a home around a radio or an audio player. And it's between 15 and 25 people. But there are 11,000 of those across all of India. And every day we talk to them with a radio station on Sri Lanka and from the south. It's a 400,000 watt radio station. And we have a 500,000 watt radio station that speaks from the north in. So in terms of bringing in and being on the ground with people actually where they are, and it's very interesting to see what God does. In fact, it's pretty incredible. We're getting ready to put we have a 1 million watt transmitter that covers the Middle East, covers Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, that whole area every night. And we're speaking hope to the Middle East. We have a 1 million watt radio station that the KGB built that covers Russia and everything west of the Ural Mountains. And so if you go around the world, we have 21 large transmitting locations. And we co-partner with about 2,000 FM stations that are more local in a country. For instance, we just signed on an FM station that covers Singapore and the surrounding Indonesian islands. And that station just went on the air in June, in fact. And we're looking at other situations to be able to bring hope to people. By the way, that's the only Christian radio station in Singapore. It's illegal to broadcast anything that has to do with religion in Singapore. So we're on an Indonesian island 15 miles off the coast of Singapore with a 200-foot tower and a 10,000-watt transmitter. And we're speaking to Singapore and to the surrounding islands. We're looking for opportunities around the world to speak in the name of Jesus Christ. It's very, very important. And you say, well, how's it going? Last year, we heard from over 32 million people who responded either online or with written letters or however, but responded to us. And I have to be honest with you, that's a conservative number. And the reason it's a conservative number is, I think statistics get inflated. And we have a vice president whose primary role it is to make sure that we are not inflated. But what the real number was about 70 million, frankly. And so you begin to think about that, and you think about the impact of talking to 70 million people who've responded each and every day. In fact, under the broadcast stations, there are 4.2 billion people. And so we talk to most of the world online. We have people online every month. There's close to about 1.8 million people that are consuming our content online. And when we say consuming content, that is not just clicks. That's someone who goes on and spends about 5 minutes on there. And you'd be very interested to know that one of the biggest places we have of people who take that content are from the Middle East, from Iran, and from the Gulf. That's very interesting to just realize what's going on. I think, one of the things that we're involved in is how do you bring hope to the world? And I think one of the things that we're dealing with globally right now is the whole religious freedom, international religious freedom. Last summer, I went up and attended a conference in Washington, D.C. on international religious freedom. I have a fraternity brother by the name of Sam Brownback, and some of you heard of him. He's a former U.S. Senator, governor from Kansas, and his primary mission right now is to work on international religious freedom. And it's pretty incredible to see what God's doing around the world. Whether you're a Muslim, whether you're a Hindu, whether you're a Christian, or who you are, can you at least respect? I mean, you look today what's going on in Northwest China with the Uyghurs. The Uyghurs are an Islamic group of people, and they literally are going through an extermination. And that's not from news media, that's from actual people who've been there and I've talked to. There are things going on that are just incredible in the world today. We look back at World War II and we think the atrocities that went on. You know what? We're still dealing with that. And you know why? Because it's the sinfulness of the heart. I haven't met anybody who's perfect yet. And there was only one perfect person who actually claimed to be perfect, and that was Jesus. And I'm first, I'll admit, I have things in my life that you would classify as being sin. And that's what drives people. And how do you work with people? Well, if the big problem in the world is conflict, what is the big solution? And I'd like to just suggest that reconciliation is the solution. But how do you reconcile? What does it take to reconcile a situation? And if you'll indulge me, I'd like to use a personal example from my own family. My great-grandmother moved over here from Germany with her sister for an arranged marriage and couldn't get back to Germany. So she married my great-grandfather, who happened to be a rancher in Kansas, and she needed a home, And she needed a place to be able to stay, and he needed a wife. He was 57 and she was 22. So you can imagine what that kind of a relationship was, but that was how the Libby family came. And they had 4 children. And they had quite a bit of land in Kansas. Now, in North Carolina, you probably never have land fights among families. It just seems to me like this is a better culture probably in Kansas. But I have to tell you, in that first generation, there was a big fight over land. In my father's generation, the second generation, my grandfather had passed away. And so my father and my aunt and my other uncle got together, and it was basically over land. And I'll never forget sitting there, and it was kind of like, well, we're going to put the spouses out of this because this is a Libby family deal. And Lauren, you're kind of religious, and you're the only one that we'll listen to. So would you referee the fight? Okay. Well, about 16 hours later, we came out of that and we had a solution because people decided they didn't want to give it to the lawyers and give everything away to the lawyers. Well, I can tell you relationships were fractured. Absolutely incredible. In the previous generation before that, my grandfather and my great uncle had not spoken to each other in 51 years. I grew up in a little one-room country schoolhouse out in the middle of Kansas, and in one corner, my grandfather would sit with his tribe, and my great uncle would sit in the other corner with his tribe. And the kids, there was kind of like an imaginary line right down the center of that school. And, the kids would go across and play with each other, and, but boy, it didn't go any further than that. Well, down into the next generation with my father. My father, at age 68, he was one of the hardest working, hardest cussing German ranchers you've ever met in your life. And he had an encounter with Jesus Christ at age 68. And if you would have told me that he at age 85 would have been at the Smith County Memorial Hospital talking to people who were getting ready to exit life and talking to them about their eternal destiny, I would have said, you're unfurnished upstairs. But very interesting. And I'll never forget, my aunt, the wife of my uncle, passed away. And so we went to the funeral. We were not invited to sit with family. So we kind of sat in the back. And my dad called me up, and he was in a nursing home across the street from the funeral home in this little town. That's pretty convenient, because you just got to go across the street. And so he called me and said, hey, listen, kid, would you take me over to Aunt Jean's funeral? And so I went over. I drove from Colorado Springs out to our little town in Kansas, and I took him to this funeral. And so afterwards, we sat in the back, and, the family was going to come out of the funeral home. And he said, he was in his wheelchair. He said, what I want you to do is I want you to wheel me right up next to the door where the family's going to come out. And when the family came out, my father hugged every one of those family members and told them that he loved them. Well, you can't even imagine what that did in our family. The reconciliation. Fast forward, my father is on his deathbed, and I'm out, I'm there, and we had coffee and cookies. And my dad was known by, I got sick and tired of going across the state of Kansas and somebody saying, oh, you're Dean Libby's kid. But they showed up to say goodbye to my father. And so my uncle shows up, whose wife had died at that funeral. And so he's kind of circling out here, and my father was in a care facility, and I saw him. And so we sat down, and he began to talk to me about stories about World War II and flying in B-17s, stories I'd never heard. Absolutely incredible. And then he looked at me and says, well, I need to go and talk to your dad. We need to get a few things straight. And you know what? They were reconciled. 3 days later, my father died. 3 years later, my uncle died. Well, you know, that reconciliation was absolutely essential. That broke a pattern of 3 generations. 3 generations of conflict. And if you don't mind, I'd like to share a couple of verses from the book of Colossians in the Bible. And I think this gives you an idea on how reconciliation can actually occur. In Colossians 1:15, it talks about Jesus. He said he's the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. So the Bible claims that Jesus was not only God, but he was also human. And in one statement, it says that in the scriptures. And then down a few more statements, it said, for it pleased the Father that in him all the fullness should dwell, and by him to reconcile all things to himself, by him, for the things on heaven, things on earth, having made peace through the blood of his death. And you who were once alienated and enemies in your mind by wicked works, yet now he is reconciled. I shared this story at a prayer meeting in Moscow, Russia, back in December of 2019. And the Ukrainians had refused to come to the prayer breakfast for obvious reasons. I mean, because this thing's been going on for I don't know how long between Ukraine and Russia. And the whole idea of reconciliation, how do we become reconciled? Who can be an agent of reconciliation? I tell you, we need some agents of reconciliation these days. And for those of us who are faith-based or more of a faith-based, I think we need to engage. The Bible says, blessed are the peacemakers, not the peacekeepers. And it's an aggressive thing. It's an active thing. We probably don't have any conflicts at all in the city of Cary. But you know what? I think we can be agents of reconciliation if we just allow, on a spiritual basis, allow ourselves to be used in that role. Now, I'm a former Rotarian. I used to be a member of the North Colorado Springs Rotary Club. I quit because my attendance was less than stellar because I was traveling around the world. And everywhere I would show up, I remember in Wiesbaden, Germany, down in Baden-Baden, Germany, we would give little banners, to the other Rotary Club. I don't know whether you do that or here or not. But I broke the budget because I used too many of those banners. And so they said, hey, listen, you're out of here. And it was a great association. Rotary is a phenomenal organization globally. It's not just here in the United States. I noticed we got some Paul Harris fellows here. I'm aware of that. And you think about what Rotary could do just as a group to be a reconciliation factor globally. And what I find is that when you get people talking together and you get them sit down on a human basis, it is amazing what can happen. Instead of sitting in a room and negotiating and trying to bring something into fruition. So that's what I wanted to talk today about was, TWR is in many ways, we set the foundation for reconciliation, spiritually, physically, emotionally. And we do that every day. We produce programming. I wish you could listen to some of the programming in the languages. It's absolutely incredible. I remember being at our transmitting site in Swaziland, which is now known as Eswatini. When you're the king, you get to rename the country, So it's now Eswatini. And listening to the transmitters, 5 of them, each in a different language, talking to various parts of Africa on shortwave. You begin to realize that we're a global community. And as we come together as a global community, I think, we can really have an impact. And it can start right here, right now, in this room with the Rotary Club. So thank you for the invitation. I have 7.5 minutes left. As a broadcaster, I watch the clock, and we have to be out of here by 1:30, right? Okay. So are there any questions or any statements or anything you'd like to say? Here, yes.
So you talk about the large number of listeners that you have in other countries. Is there a way to find out if those people are learning about Christianity, like as a new Christian or from a different faith? Is there a way to kind of figure out, are they exploring that as a new concept, or are they just reinforcing what they already?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Okay, good.
Yep. We have programming that, is what you would call more of a introduction to what a relationship with Jesus is like. We have one called The Prophets that we broadcast into the Islamic world. And it takes all the prophets that the Islamic faith believes in, all the prophets, and why Jesus was a superior prophet. And so what we do is we bring people along in that process. Does everyone, agree with us? No. In fact, I've had a death threat from ISIS. I've got a note in my upper drawer saying that, we're basically heathen and they're going to end our existence. And so, it's kind of an interesting world we live in. But, yes, the answer to your question. Anything else? Yeah.
For the countries that you broadcast into that maybe not officially be so receptive of the work that you do, what kind of, do you deal on a regular basis with cyber attacks, efforts to knock you off the airwaves or things of that nature, or do they kind of leave you alone?
Oh, yeah. There's a new industry that called cyber friends. And every now and then we will get a notice from one of these cyber friends saying, we cracked your system. And if you'll pay us $2,500, we will help you fix that system. So there's a whole economy around that. And yes, if you were to come over to where we are on Gregson Drive, and you'd walk in, basically everything emanates around the internet, digital these days. And it's a pretty incredible world that we live in, what you can actually do. I could step into a studio in Cary, North Carolina, and broadcast directly over every transmitter we have in Africa, or every transmitter that we have anywhere in the world. Even 10 years ago, that wasn't a possibility. Or we can, if you want to see us, we're at TWR 360. You can download the app. Be either on the iPhone for your iPhone or for your Android, either one. And you can sit in there and you can listen to 100 different languages. You pick the language, it'll speak to you in your language. Yes.
How do you finance this program?
How do we finance it?
Yes.
3 ways. Number one is all of the people who are involved are like missionaries. We raise personal support from individuals and also from churches. The second way is we sell airtime to certain people. We sell airtime. And the third way is we basically are, we do fundraising. And it's very interesting this year. This is our biggest year we've ever had in funding. And I noticed that in terms of a lot of nonprofits are doing very well. And you have to ask yourself, why are those resources coming in right now into these types of organizations? I think there's a purpose for it, because I think what we talk about is going to have to be absolutely essential for people globally. And so, it's just, all we can say is thank you.
Is one section of the world more generous than the other section?
Well, you get into some of the third world countries and obviously you don't have as much generosity. But listen, I remember being in Ghana about 30 years ago, and we were trying to finance a project in Ghana. And we went around to a home and they said, we'll give you a dozen eggs every week. Well, that's not currency. But in that country, a dozen eggs is a big deal, particularly every week. And so God has built philanthropy into the hearts of every culture. And I've been over 100 countries now, and I've been involved in, I don't know, until we stopped traveling, I was gone about 60% of the time. And there's always that component in every culture if you look for it. So, yes, sir.
Warren, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you.
A very inspiring message, and it's always amazing to see what's just around the corner here in Cary. So thank you very much for you and David for joining us today. These are some note cards from our from Jerry Miller, who's our resident artist here.
My goodness.
And we thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Lauren, for a very personal and inspirational message. And it's kind of incredible to think that you could speak to 4.2 billion people from Cary, North Carolina. And your signal that each of us can have an impact on the world.
Well, if you ever want a tour, come on over.
I'll be glad to give you. I
This
think,
is David gives a $50 tour. I just get 25.
there you go. The premium tour, David. Okay, great. Well, thank you. I do want to recognize a couple of special people this week. Bruce?
David, would you like to?
I can just pass these out.
Just tell me what it is.
This is just a brochure,
Yep.
general brochure. What's the best thing to
Great.
do? Leave it on the
Yeah,
table?
if you, we can help you get that distributed. David has some literature and we'll get a supply for those that are online if you let me know that you'd like to have it. There's a couple of people who are looking to connect by signal, either ham radio operators that are asking about that too. So we'll get you connected to them, David.
Great lobby.
Yeah. All right, so January 30th, I have my days of the week all messed up, as you know, but Sunday, I believe, is January 30th. Sean Chabara will celebrate a birthday on the 30th. And Bill Zinnick, happy birthday, Bill. Monday, the 31st of January. Happy birthday, my friend. Next week, we heard all about our chili dinner, 19th annual chili dinner, virtual plus. Begins promptly at 12:30. Next week's meal, I'm not at liberty to reveal, but let's just say that it's likely to be a dish appropriate for the day. In 2 weeks, Bruce also has David has the program for us. Robert Louisiana will come to us with a conversation about healthcare. He's been making the tour of a number of Rotary clubs, and I know he's been getting great grades. So certainly is an issue for us to be paying attention to. I want to thank everybody for your time and being here. Kim, it's wonderful to have you with us a second time. David, Lauren, we're blessed by your presence, so thank you very much. If I can, I'm going to ask our friend Mary Cam to lead us out in the four-way test, but hang on a second, Mary. Go ahead, Mary.
Thanks, Bob. If you will all join me in the four-way test. First.
Is it the truth?
Second, it's fair to all concerned. Third, will it be beneficial? Rats. Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? My apologies. That's what happened when you do it from memory.
Well, and to try to do it by yourself, there's a lift that comes by doing it in the crowd, right? It's more familiar. Great job. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, well done. You made us all work hard. Get our answers in there. We had to remember.
Bye, everybody. Have a good week.
Okay. Take care, Paul.
Yeah. Everybody be well.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
Eat chili next week. Bring your own can of chili, I guess.
Right, that sounds good.
Take care. Bye-bye.